Hi, it's Tim on Digital Woodworking. Today we're going to talk about my CNC and how I've set it up. I've modified my CNC in a way that makes it much faster to set up, more precise, easier to use, even easier to hold down parts. Let's get started. Okay, my CNC has what you could easily see is a grid system on it. I've set up all these slats. There's these holes that hold the slats down to the table. There's the gaps in between. Everything on this particular CNC was set up to be a 3" by 9" grid. So what that means is the slats themselves, the center line between each of these grooves is 3 inches. The center line between each of these holes here is 3 inches. The 9" gap is from here to here. So why did I choose 3 by 9? It just sort of made sense at the time. If I had to do it again, I'd suggest other types of grids. If you're using imperial measurements, a 4 by 8 grid is probably a little more useful. I'll get into the details of that a little bit later. So the 3 by 9 spacing allows me to position parts, but by having these grooves and all these holes here cut by the CNC, I know they're perfectly parallel to, in my case, the x-axis this way, the y-axis this way. Let me show you in a drawing. As you can see on the drawing, I've spaced out several parts laid out on this table. And with that, I'm able to cut this same part multiple times. Really works great. It's very simple to do. The most important factor is everything on this CNC was machined by the CNC right on this bed. So if you have a bed on your CNC and it has T-slots and it has different spoil boards and all the rest of that, that will not have been machined by the CNC. If you have a really large CNC like a 4 by 8 or 5 by 10, it's very inconvenient for manufacturers to put a fixed bed on top of the machine during assembly. So they'll likely will have machined it on the bed. But if you have a smaller CNC, everything was likely bolted on at the factory. The most important thing to remember about modifying a CNC is you have to do it with all the parts bolted onto the bed. And so in this case, for example, I attached the slats. They're slightly oversized, but I ran a groove of 3/8 inch using a 3/8 inch bit right in between for a final cut. So they're made a little bit wider. They got cut down to 3/8. These final holes were actually machined by the CNC a little bit later on, so that I know that everything on this machine, again, was machined by it, but it's also accurate to this machine. And once you have that, that allows you to be able to use repeated positions around the table. So everything I position on this bed can be set up accurately and repeatedly for even duplicate parts. Let me show you. This board, once it butts up against this position here, the origin point is right here. Now if I put another board or move this board to a position here, it's exactly 1 foot away. 4 different slats, 3 times 4 is 12. So that allows me to put multiple parts and have these positions repeated. Let's talk about the slats. 2 different details. Ahead of time, I actually put a little nick with a table saw along here, a little groove. This allows me to turn these slats into T-tracks so I could slide clamps along here. The second thing is as I mentioned earlier, the slats are made a little bit wider than 3 inches. And that allows me, once they're bolted down, to come in here with a 3/8 inch bit right down the center line and end up with a perfectly parallel to the machine groove that's exactly 3/8 of an inch long. Now the holes themselves, I pre-drilled holes to a partial distance here, but the final holes, which are a 1/2 inch, that allows for a 1/2 inch dowel, or in this case I'm using a hard nylon plug, to be positioned here exactly on a 3 by 9 inch spacing. And the benefit of that becomes pretty obvious, because I could repeat these positions as I mentioned around the table. You saw the board move from here over to here, but I could repeat it all over the table as well. And that allows me to cut multiple parts in very precise positions. To do that, all I have to do is take my drawing of a part I'm cutting and simply make a clone or an array, as it's referred to in CAD, and spread them out in 3" increments, or 1 foot in this case, and move them around the table. And it also allows me to position fixtures for part holding. Okay, so the big thing I have here is a type of grid system. Now you may have a CNC that's already set up differently. For example, a number of CNCs come with embedded T-track. Other CNCs have a combination of T-track plus spoil board. And for those machines, you're going to have a slightly different way to have to deal with this. But one of the things that you'll likely want to do is customize that setup so that everything is accurately placed on the table. Later on, I'm going to show videos and plans on how to do this for the Laguna IQ, which has a combination of T-track as well as spoil board, and a very special setup for the Shape Oko. The Shape Okos have nothing but a flat surface to deal with, makes it a perfect place to look at the whole situation and to come up with different options for both holding a grid system, positioning parts, and everything else. So for today, this is Tim on Digital Woodworking. I'll see you again later. Thank you.